NASCAR has completed the next-gen test at Daytona National Speedway. NASCAR is expected to release the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule next week, and Kyle Busch has been hit with a pretty big penalty. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off with TradeToDayton.com and Scent, as they are going to sponsor Brandon Brown for 3 races. The race of the day will sponsor Brandon Brown is this week at Richmond, Las Vegas, and Kansas. Really cool to see that Brandon Brown continues to pick up sponsorship, and what's really good about this is Brandon Brown is officially sponsored for every single race this year. All sponsorship has been filled up for him, which is great to see. We've seen what Brandon Brown has done on social media. It's been really cool to see, and he's also, I believe, the third driver to have a cryptocurrency, the second Xfinity Series driver to have a cryptocurrency on their car. So really cool to see that, and it's awesome to see that he's got more sponsorship coming to him this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Talladega Xfinity Series race, as it has a title sponsor for the October race. It is going to be called the Sparks Energy 300. Now, Sparks Energy has sponsored the Xfinity Series race at Talladega in the past. They sponsored, I believe, back in 2015, 2014, 2016, and 2017 as well. I think they've had different sponsors since around 2018, but the fact that they're going to bring Sparks Energy back is really awesome to see. I'm really happy to see that we're going to continue to see Sparks Energy continue to be a branding in this sport. Really awesome news overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Amber Slagle. As Amber Slagle is going to be making 2 ARCA starts for McGowan Cook Racing's number 17 car at Las Vegas Bullring and All-American Speedway. Really awesome to see you to get an opportunity. We've seen Zane Smith drive his car in the past, and he did very well. Got a top 10, I believe, last year in this car, and she'll be driving this car for a couple races. So I'm very intrigued to see how she's going to do. I'm very intrigued how she'll do, because to be perfectly honest with you, this car's ran pretty well, especially when drivers like Zane Smith have driven it. We'll have to wait and see what happens. It's really cool to see that she is getting an opportunity to once again race here in a couple ARCA West races. Really good to see female representation in the sport as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Berry. As Josh Berry is going to be driving a 31 for Jordan Anderson Racing this weekend at Richmond International Raceway. Really cool to see that Josh Berry is continuing to get a lot of Xfinity starts. Remember, it's already been announced he's going to be driving full-time for Junior Motorsports in 2022 in the number 8 car. And to see him get more Xfinity Series starts this year is really good to see. I think that Josh Berry has a very good shot of contending up front overall for at least eventually a top 10 and maybe even a top 5. We've seen how well he's done on the short tracks and even the 1-mile tracks, even on the intermediate tracks as well. I think he'll do really well. I don't think this car is going to be capable of winning for Josh Berry, but you never know. We see him do really well with not the best equipment. Look at the cars he's driven in the Truck Series directly, Warrior organization. He's done really well in those cars and trucks. So I think that I'd be very not surprised to see Josh Berry run well. I think he'll run really well this weekend here at Richmond. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Akinori Ogata. As Akinori Ogata is going to be driving a 52 for Jimmy Means Racing this weekend at Richmond Raceway. This will be Akinori Ogata's first start in the NASCAR Xfinity Series since 2019, when he drove the 6.6 for MBM Motorsports, where he finished 32nd or 33rd due to spinning out, and I think got some damage in that as well. Really cool to see that Akinori is getting an opportunity. The thing is, I'm not expecting this car to run up front, to be perfectly honest with you, because let's be honest with ourselves, this car is not a very fast car. We've seen the car kind of struggle overall. When Joey Gage drove this car when he had a lot of funding, this car contended for top 20s and top 25s. This car has done anything but that for the last years, and I'm not expecting this car to run up front. But it's awesome to see that Akinori Ogata is once again getting an opportunity, another opportunity nonetheless, to race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series once again, and maybe he'll get more starts with Jimmy Means Racing down the road. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chris Hacker. As Chris Hacker is going to drive the 45 for Nice Motorsports later this year at Las Vegas, and also in the penultimate race at Martinsville Raceway. I am very excited about this for a lot of reasons. Chris Hacker, for a lot of you don't know, is really popular on social media, and not to mention, I think he is a very talented driver. Yes, he did not finish really well with Ray Brothers the last time he raced in the Truck Series at Gateway, but one little statistic a lot of people are not bringing up is he had top 20 speed in Raymond Brothers trucks. Yes, he was a lot of laps down, so he was never going to have an opportunity to contend. He was like 9 or 10 laps down. But the fact that he had top 20 speed in the Raymond Brothers trucks are really, really impressive because those trucks are not really fast. So I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to do. I would not be honestly surprised, to be real with you, if he gets some top 10s or even some top 15s. I'm giving really high expectations for this guy, but let's be honest with ourselves. The fact he had that much speed, even in there, is really, really impressive to see. I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to do, and I'm looking forward to his couple truck starts, and maybe in the future, he may go full-time with Nice Motorsports down the road, but we'll have to wait and see what happens on that front. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Sam Mayer. As Sam Mayer is going to be driving the 99 for BJ McLeod Motorsports this weekend at Richmond International Raceway. Now, Sam Mayer has been driving the 8 car for the last 7 or 8 weeks, really since around the Pocono weekend. But this weekend, Dillon Jr. is going to be driving the 8 car in his first Xfinity Series start and only Xfinity Series start of the 2021 season at Richmond. So, Sam Mayer is going to be driving the 99 car. Now, a lot of people were confused when the initial entry list came out because it did say Ford. Well, they are basically taking that 99 car, and it's going to be a Junior Motorsports car, but the 99 team, BJ McLeod car, is going to be giving the owner's points to BJ McLeod. So it makes a lot of sense for that. And QPS is also going to sponsor Sam Mayer this weekend. Now, let's be for real, Sam Mayer has not had a very good season so far in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. His statistics have not been impressive. He's had, I think, 4 DNS in 9 races. But again, I think the lack of practice qualifying has affected him. That being said, though, Ty Gibbs, who everyone thought Sam was going to be better than Ty Gibbs has gone out and won races, and Sam hasn't really done a lot and not done great this year. But that being said, he is young. He has talent, unlike what people say about him. He actually has talent to back him up. He's young enough. I think if he gets some practice and qualifying, I think he's going to do better. But really cool to see that Sam Mayer is going to be racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series races later this year. I'm really looking forward to that for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Patrick Emerling. As Patrick Emerling is going to drive the 23 for our Motorsports at Richmond Raceway. Now, Patrick Emerling has made a few starts so far this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Again, they haven't overall been too impressive, to be honest with you, but again, I think that there's been a lot of unfortunate issues that happen. But he's also a very solid wheel and modified driver as well, which one of the reasons I think Patrick Emerling is going to be competing in this event nonetheless is because of the fact the wheel and modified tour is making their first start at Richmond, I believe, since 2001 in 19 years. So it has been a long time since there has been a wheel and modified tour race, which is one of the reasons why he's getting to drive this car. But you never know what he's going to do. Again, Richmond is very similar to what wheel and modified guys run, and they tend to run. Tends to run pretty well when you have that. So I think that we may see a top 15 or top 20 run for him. I would not be surprised about that because let's be for real. I think Patrick Emerling has the talent to back it up. Again, it's not been impressive to watch so far this year, but I think when you have a lack of starts and you don't have as much experience, it kind of affects you. So hopefully Patrick Emerling will run really well, and we'll have to wait and see what happens going forward for him. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about JD Motorsports. As JD Motorsports has once again swapped owners' points of the number 4 cars and the number 6 cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, this is not the first time that those owner points have been swapped. We've seen it earlier this year, I think around the Circuit Americas weekend, when we've had the 4 and 6. They swapped their points earlier this year around the Circuit of the America weekends. I don't really know why they keep doing this. I'm a little surprised that NASCAR lets teams decide to do if they can switch owner points if they want to, unless they're giving owner points to another organization. Maybe COVID has a reason for that. I'm a little surprised why their NASCAR is overall letting that happen, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd like to hear an explanation to why they're letting that happen, but it's very interesting to see. I think a big reason for that is because I think you look at the 6 team, they've had a lot of issues and they've been struggling in the owners' points, and I think they're giving those points maybe back to Landon Cassill overall, help him out in the points, because Landon Cassill's been really good this year, but unfortunately I think that his car really doesn't have a lot of owners' points right now. So I'm very intrigued to see why this is happening, why this is the case, but it's very interesting overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the starting lineups for the Cup Series races and the Xfinity Series race this weekend at Richmond International Raceway. Let's start off with the NASCAR Xfinity Series race. Austin Cindric is going to be starting on the pole in that race at Richmond, as he's really, really high up in the owners' points, and he ran pretty well this past weekend in Darlington, finishing up, and I think even the second or third at this race. That's why he's starting up front. My pick to win the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, I know I'm going a little bit bold, but I'm picking Dale Earnhardt Jr. to win this weekend. I think Dale Jr. is going to get it done. Dale Jr. has historically ran really well, and his last win in the NASCAR Xfinity Series came in 2016, and you guessed it, at Richmond Raceway. So I think Dale Jr. is going to get it done, and the Junior Motorsports cars have been really fast here. Last year, Justin Allgaier swept both races, so I think that Dale Jr. is going to win the Xfinity Series race at Richmond. Now let's jump up to the Cup Series. Kyle Larson is going to be starting in the pole in that. I believe Denny Hamlin is going to be starting on the front row for that one. My pick to win the NASCAR Cup Series race is going to be Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr. has been really, really good on the 750 horsepower package races, and he also has won here back in 2019. And he had a top 2 or 3 car, and probably one of the best cars and biggest contender to Denny Hamlin most of the day at Richmond. So I think that Martin Truex Jr. picks up the win in the Cup, and I think that Xfinity we're going to see Dillon Jr. The juniors I think are going to win those specific races. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Dillon. As Ty Dillon this weekend is going to be replacing Brett Moffitt at Richmond in the 0-2 car. Now, the reason that Ty Dillon is going to be driving a 0-2 car is Brett Moffitt has been having an undisclosed illness that has taken out of the car this week. And remember, this past weekend, Ty Dillon actually substituted for Brett Moffitt in the 0-2 car on Saturday afternoon. Ty Dillon had been called up by the Our Motorsports organization as Ty Dillon has driven multiple races in this car, not the 0-2 car exactly, but the 23 car, but he has driven already with the organization this year, so they called him up to give him another opportunity to race, and it looks like, once again, due to that illness, Brett Moffitt will not race and Ty Dillon will go in. Wishing the best of luck for Brett Moffitt and wishing him a speedy recovery here really, really soon. But in regards to Ty Dillon getting an opportunity, this is really, really good to see that Ty Dillon's getting another opportunity to race here at Richmond. And I think that Ty Dillon will surprise a lot of people this weekend in the 0-2 car. And I think the reason is that one, I think the Our Motorsports cars have gotten better over time as the year has gone on. We've seen Tyler Reddick be pretty competitive when he's been in those cars, and we've seen other drivers be competitive. Not only that, Ty Dillon historically at Richmond, he's been really, really fast. So I think that Ty Dillon is going to show a lot of speed this week, and I would not be surprised if Ty Dillon gets a top 10. I'm really excited to see that Ty Dillon is coming back in racing once again. I'm not really sure how many races he's going to race overall this year, but I think he definitely should be a candidate if they run 2 full-time cars here at Xfinity. And if Ty Dillon can't go to Cup, I think Ty Dillon should go full-time with his team going into 2022. I think he's earned it. He's done pretty well, and I think that he'll do a lot of good things going into next year. I think it'll be very, very fun to watch here at Richmond. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Steve Lauletta. As Steve Lauletta has been announced by 2311 that he is a former Ganassi exec, Steve Lauletta, who was a 2311 interim president for the last year as his team began, will remain in that position on a full-time basis. Steve Lauletta is officially the president of this team going forward. Really, really good in my opinion to keep another guy in there who I think has been really, really successful so far with 2311 Racing. I think he's one of the people that does overall run the operations, and not only that, is one of the people behind the marketing minds. And I would not 100% be surprised if he is behind the reason that Kurt Busch is going over to team, because I don't remember the last time Steve Lauletta worked at Chip Ganassi Racing, but I think he worked at Chip Ganassi Racing up until last year, so he could have been one of the big contributing factors to why Kurt Busch is over at that organization. But I think Steve Lauletta so far at 2311 has been successful. That being said, though, I'm expecting 2311 to Kurt Busch coming into this team, and with Steve Lauletta taking the presidency part of the team, I think that Steve Lauletta could bring a lot to the table going forward. So I'm really happy to see that Steve Lauletta is going to continue working with 2311, and hopefully he will lead this team to not just a more successful 2022 season, but I hope that what he can do going forward for this team is make 2311 Racing Team a much stronger organization. Now remember, they also this year, keep in mind, this team did have a lot of issues getting parts and pieces going into this year. So I think that was one of the contributing factors to why they have struggled up until recently, but they have been picking up the pieces and have been more of a consistent top 15 and top 20 team on a week-by-week basis. So I think that Steve Lauletta has a lot of effect on why this organization has been improving on a week-by-week basis. I'm really looking forward to see this for sure. Really happy to see that Steve Lauletta is going to continue being the president of 2311. I think that this is a huge benefit for 2311 Racing going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 2021 NASCAR Hall of Fame. It was reported earlier this morning by Bob Pockers that the class of Dillon Jr., Red Farmer, and Mike Stefanik will be inducted on Friday, January 21st, 2022. Now, this is a 2021 class. The reason that this class is getting inducted in 2022 instead of 2021 was due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's why they pushed Hall of Fame class, and this is why there was no Hall of Fame class for 2022, which means that the 2022 Hall of Fame class will be null and void, which means that the eligibility process going in 2023, you're going to have a lot more drivers that are going to be eligible for the NASCAR Hall of Fame going forward. I'm really happy to see that Dillon Jr., Red Farmer, and Mike Stefanik are finally getting the rights to be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I think these three absolutely deserve it. They've deserved it for a long time. Red Farmer being one of the grassroots reasons of our sport and a legend in the grassroots. Mike Stefanik, a legendary late model driver, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. has been one of the reasons been carrying his sport for so long. I'm really happy to see that all these people are going to finally get in the Hall of Fame. It's been a big question about it, and I do think that in 2023, we won't see a class for 2022, I believe, but 2023, we will see a class, and I think that we're going to see a really awesome class going forward into 2023, and I think a lot of drivers will get in next year. And I would also not be surprised, because there was not a class for 2022, I would not be surprised if we do see an increase in the number of people that are allowed in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, especially with the eligibility. I would not be surprised if we see the increase back up to 5 once again. But keep it similar to what they've done. Mix it up what they used to do before, and then bring some new people in. I think that is what NASCAR could do going into next year, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Darlington TV ratings for the Cup Series this weekend for the Southern 500. It was reported earlier today by Adam Stern that NBCSN earned a 1.43 rating and 2.458 million viewers for Sunday's Cookout Southern 500 at Darlington. This is up slightly from a 1.37 and 2.44 million viewers from last year. It was also reported that the race was the 10th highest rated sports event last weekend overall, but number one on cable, as the top 9 were on broadcast. This is a big win. I think NASCAR has overall been headed in the right direction. It was also reported as well, I believe by Max Swartakis, I don't remember the guy's name exactly, but he reported that basically NASCAR, this is actually the highest rated opening race for NASCAR playoff race since 2016. So I do think this sport is overall going in the right direction when it comes to TV ratings. But there's a couple things I want to say in regards. Again, the numbers are really, really good. I do think, however, the ratings could have been a lot higher if this race was on main broadcast. I think at this, especially a crown jewel event, you need to have your crown jewel events on main broadcast. And it feels like a lot of people kind of forgot about this race. And the race was honestly really, really good. And if you look at the polls too, nonetheless, Jeff Gluck's poll, 90% plus people really, really enjoyed this event. The racing was really, really good, and a lot of people did not leave the event overall. So I think it's a big benefit for the ratings overall. Again, it's really good to see the ratings are up once again very, very slightly. But I think going into next year when the schedule does get released, which we're going to talk about really, really soon here on the channel, they need to have this race on NBC and as many races on the main broadcast as they can. No, look, football is coming up, but at the same time, football doesn't start until tomorrow, so I don't completely understand, in my opinion, why you just don't put this race, Southern 500, especially one of the big crown jewel events, on NBC. But I will say it's good to see that the ratings are up for sure. Happy about that. I'm looking forward to that overall for sure, that the ratings continue to go in the right direction. And hopefully as the playoffs go on, as the season continues on, and going into finals, we don't have a huge drop all the way we've had over the last couple years, and we can keep the momentum going forward in regards to the ratings. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Beard Motorsports. As Beard Motorsports is going to be making its return in 2022 with the number 62 car. They will attempt the 2022 Daytona 500 and the other Daytona and Talladega races that are going to be on the schedule in 2022. Now, there's been a lot of speculation in regards to Beard Motorsports because, unfortunately, the owner of the team, Mark Beard, passed away earlier this year. But his wife and widow is basically right now taking over the organization, has been running it. And there's been a lot of speculation about the future of this organization. And a lot of speculation started because Noah Gragson posted a fire suit on, I believe, his story on Instagram, or I believe on his Snapchat, had posted that fire suit on his story. And now we have confirmation that they're coming back. I'm really happy to see that they are going to be attempting. First thing I want to talk about is the car looks terrible, by the way. They need to fix that. The fact that number is so close to the front and there's so much space open, even the number moved a lot forward, which we'll talk about later in today as well. That I don't not overall a big fan of it, the numbers up front. But I will say it's good to see that a small tier team that also has a next-gen chassis, which they said they would like to eventually maybe go full-time as well in the future as well, especially purchasing a next-gen chassis. It's great to see that they're going to be competing in the 500, and it does overall help the entry list as well, because we're going to also very soon here talk about the entry list for the 500, because there's a lot of people think that the entry list is probably going to be small, which I think I'm going to disagree. I think that potentially we could see a very good entry list. Now, my big question is, who is going to be the driver for this car next year? I think it's going to be Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson, like I said, has been teasing about that fire suit with Beard Motorsports. On top of that, he did tempt the Daytona 500 with the team. And Noah Gragson is going to be running full-time with Junior Motorsports once again next year. And also, you have to remember, he is from Las Vegas as well. So I think that'll be a huge contributing factor to why he gets. And I also think Brendan Gaughan does have somewhat of a say in regards to gets into that ride as well. So I think that Beard Motorsports will run with Noah Gragson for 2022. Now, like I said, since they are an uncharted organization, they will have to qualify in an event. I think next year, unlike this year, I think that they are going to be able to qualify into the event. It's really good to see that they're coming back. I've been wanting to see this team come back for a long time. And again, a lot of people thought they shut down, but again, those are just rumors and speculation. The fact they are going to be attempting to come back and race the Daytona 500 is really, really exciting. And like I said, it does help the interest. And I'm hoping that teams like NBM Motorsports can get 2 chassis. We know that they're working on their chassis right now to come out there. You know there's other teams like GMS Racing going to be joining. We don't know if they're going to be a full-time team or if they're going to be a part-time team next year. So I'm definitely overall looking forward to that for sure. And it's great to see that we're going to see Beard Motorsports make their return to NASCAR next year. I'm really looking forward over that for sure. Make their return and run the Daytona 500 next year. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 3 major stories in today's episode, as we are talking about Kyle Busch. As Kyle Busch has been fined $50,000 for the way he entered the garage at Darlington Raceway. For those who need a little bit of backstory on why Kyle Busch has been fined $50,000, Kyle Busch, around 128 or 129 laps in the event, he wasn't really having a good night to begin with, running outside the top 10. Kyle Busch came down on Austin Dillon on the backstretch, and he got into the outside wall and was not a very happy camper, really was mad at himself and the crew as well for not giving him a good car. He drove down to pit road and pulled it up left, and there were people that were on there, and he almost basically ran over and ran into those cones as well. Now, in my personal opinion, I'm very, very mixed about this because, one, I do think that maybe NASCAR could have given him a little bit less money. I think that NASCAR, well, I'll say this. I think NASCAR was going to fine him regardless. I think personally, I don't think NASCAR should have suspended him. I saw a lot of people that were basically saying he should be fired out of sport and he should be suspended from the sport indefinitely. And I do think that he should have had a little bit less leeway. I think $25,000 would probably have been a perfect penalty. I think that would have been a fair penalty overall. But I think that this is NASCAR setting a statement that you cannot enter the garage. They did say, Scott Miller did say, that they were probably going to penalize Kyle Busch. They said they were looking into it. When NASCAR tends to look into situations, they don't always remember. You look at the situation where he basically ran into I think it was the pace car. NASCAR did not penalize him for that. And I think the reason was NASCAR knew they messed up, and they decided to let him go from that situation. But I think overall, it's the right call to penalize him for that. Again, I'll say this. I think that Kyle Busch should have been a lot more careful. He did actually hit the brakes, so it's not like his brakes weren't working. He did hit the brake to not hit him, so at least he had the common sense to run there. And I think that he could have been a lot more careful in regards to that. You've got to be really, really safe, and you can't really run into people, especially people that are working their asses off at the track. You do have to be careful on that front. You can't just drive through it and stuff, and you got to be really, really careful. But at the same time, in my honest opinion, those people should not overall be there, and they should know that it is a live track. And you can't just, in my opinion, just be there, and you should know that cars are coming. If you see a car that's coming, you probably should get out of the way and not wait till the last second. I think that again, I'm very, very neutral on this. I think NASCAR is making the right call, especially when it comes to safety, and NASCAR is trying to be really, really safe, and they don't want overall anybody to get injured from the situation. But at the same time, people just need to be really, really aware of their surroundings, and it is a live pit road. You overall have to be careful. But that being said, I think NASCAR is making overall the right call to penalize him. Again, I think $50,000 is a little bit more than I would have penalized him, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think that they're overall making the right call. I knew they were going to penalize him, and I did say, and I've been saying that they probably should penalize him for that to set a precedent. I think that what this is really telling people is that if Kyle Busch does this again, he'll probably get suspended for this. I would not be surprised. But $50,000, you got to be careful. And it's not a lot of money anyways. Kyle Busch is a multi-millionaire. I mean, look at Riding Energy. It's selling pretty well. So I think NASCAR overall making the right call in this decision, and I think it's good to see that NASCAR is keep focusing on safety and not trying to cause any more problems than they already have right now. I think it's overall a great decision by NASCAR to penalize him for it, and I think they're making the right call, and they got to set precedents, and they got to take care of safety, and you don't want anybody that's going to get hurt or anybody that's going to get injured on pit road, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. It was reported late last night around 9 o'clock Eastern, according to Adam Stern, NASCAR is tentatively set to announce the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule next week per sources. Among the notable moves, Worldwide Technology Raceway, also known as Gateway near St. Louis, is expected to get a cup race, while Pocono is expected to lose one. Also reported later that evening, he says, as Jordan Bianchi first reported, the 2022 schedule so that NASCAR is eyeing for the LA Coliseum short track concept is the Busch Class exhibition, which would move from Daytona. He also ended up reporting earlier today that among the expected moves in next week's NASCAR Cup Series schedule release is a return to Circuit of the Americas. First things I want to get out of some of the smaller stuff. First thing, the LA Coliseum idea. Like I said, I did make a video on this earlier this week talking about this. There are positives and negatives to this move. First of all, the good news is that you go into a major market, and you also have another short track on the schedule. But I do think the negatives overall is going to be the travel costs, and the teams are going to have a lot of money. Now, like I said, NASCAR, you start the season off in the West Coast, but the differences between now and back then is that when NASCAR is planning to have the LA Coliseum is February 6th, during that dead week in the Super Bowl, so you have the potential travel concerns. Another thing I did not mention is the traffic issues. If you live in the LA area, you know what I'm talking about. Traffic in LA is terrible, and there's been issues when it comes to traffic when it is getting into the tracks. Do you think people are going to come back to this event if it happens, if their traffic is really bad? I honestly don't think so. And another thing, you're hurting the tradition of the Daytona Speedways. They have been really condensing down on the Daytona Speedways for a long time. They've been cutting back on it. They've been cutting back on practice dates. Now, there might be more practice dates going in the next year and some combined practice dates going into next year as well. But you're cutting back on speedways, and it's hurting tradition of speedways because remember, the Busch Clash has been held at Daytona since 1979 up until this year. I know that this event has been overall dying, but I think that Daytona Road Course could have saved this event overall. And I know a lot of people have already purchased tickets for that event, and they're going to end up losing money, which you're not overall happy about that, to be perfectly honest with you. And again, I understand what NASCAR is trying to do. They're trying to go out to LA and have a bigger market. I think LA is a massive market, but there are some logistical issues with that. Next one we'll talk about is Circuit of the Americas. I think Circuit of the Americas absolutely deserves to have a return to the track and a second chance. Now, look, a lot of people are going to be mad about this because a lot of people thought that COTA the last time we were there was really bad. But let's be honest with ourselves. Circuit of Americas was unfortunately affected due to the rain problems that happened at the track. It had nothing to do with the racing out there. When they were actually racing, it was really good. But the issue was that there were safety issues that happened in the event. So I think the track deserves a second chance. It's one of the most historic. And not to mention, the crowd of the track was a lot of younger fans, and Austin is a huge market for the area, and it was a huge promotion for the event. The track had a ton of fans, and there probably will even be more because it was a restricted crowd from what I remember. I think it was 50 to 6,000 people that were allowed in the event. It wasn't a full capacity crowd, so you could have potentially over 100,000 people that are allowed in that event, and it's a huge market. Again, NASCAR, I think, deserves second chancer. The event was really awesome. The racing, not to mention, was really good when there wasn't safety concerns right there. Now jumping to the big part. Worldwide Technology getting a cup date and Pocono losing a Cup Series date. First thing I want to say, I am very surprised that Pocono is going to lose a cup date considering the success of the NASCAR doubleheader. I think that both races were really solid the last time we were there. Yes, of course, Aero did play a part, and it's usually been historic where Aero has played a big part in the races at Pocono Raceway. But I do think that the event has been very successful, and not to mention that camping was a major thing. So it is unfortunate Pocono's losing it. Then I think the racing was really solid. But I do think one of the big reasons why this is probably happening is due to the ratings from the Saturday event. And I don't know why they did not push this on main NBC. NASCAR could have done a much better job by putting on NBC. But if you look at the ratings from the first race at Pocono, they were horrible. They were worse than Kansas last year and really were one of the lowest rated events. Probably actually think the least watched NASCAR event that's happened since NASCAR went to the old TV deals back in 2001, even back to 2000. So the ratings were terrible for Pocono, which I think is the major contributing factor to losing. Again, I understand why a lot of Pocono fans are really upset about it because, again, I know that a lot of people in the area wanted to have a doubleheader and have already paid tickets overall for NASCAR to already have a doubleheader over there. So that's one thing I will agree that is really frustrating for the fans. It does suck. But the big one, Gateway getting a cup date. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this. I've been living in the St. Louis area my whole entire life. The last time I went to a NASCAR race was 2010. The Xfinity Series races, I think the Junior July one in 2010, and I went to the Fall one in 2010. near the end of the NASCAR Xfinity Series season in 2010. And I really enjoyed those races really, really well. And I've been wanting to go to a Cup Series day. And if the Gateway was ever get a Cup day, you know I'm going to that event. And not to mention the promotion that Gateway gets, especially from the Bommarito group, the promotion that the track gets is extremely well. They almost have huge crowds for the Truck Series, one of the largest crowds for the Truck Series out there. And not to mention, the crowds for the IndyCar events are huge. They're absolutely massive. You look at the IndyCar crowds. Again, this year was a little bit less this year compared to previous years. But if you look at the IndyCar crowds, they tend to bring a lot of fans in. And the racing area in St. Louis is such a huge untapped market. And I've been telling you guys this because this is the track that has deserved a Cup day for so long. Ever since I went to that race, I have been wanting a Cup day. And thank you, Curtis Francois, because he's one of the big reasons why this track continues on. And also, I can't remember the guy, President Chris Blair, I think the guy is. Chris Blair has been also running, who's done a good job managing. Let's just hope this time they don't have issues. But the Alex Newman curse continues. But I cannot tell you how excited I am. And I'll tell you right now, I'm going to try to go to this event, especially for someone who's St. Louis. We have to go to this event. I would not be surprised if a lot of people out there that live in the area would go to the event as well. And I will tell you right now, this is going to be huge. And I will tell you, Gaby will sell in his first year. Gaby will sell it. And they have a lot of fans. I think they have 60 to 70,000 fans. And not to mention, it is another high horsepower, low downforce package race. It's one of those tracks similar to Darlington. It's one of those tracks similar to Nashville. It will be a track that will have higher horsepower and, higher horsepower and low downforce. Just going to make the racing a ton more fun and more enjoyable. But I'm not sure when I release the schedule and what other changes are going to come to it. I'm very interested to see what other changes are going to come. Are we going to go back to Indy Road Course next year? Are we going to go back to Bristol? Well, Bristol's already been confirmed, and Nashville's going to be back. But what other changes are coming? Are there other new tracks? Think about the Chicago Street Course. There's been talk about the Chicago Street Course coming. We've been waiting so long and wanting this to happen, and now it looks like the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule is finally going to get released next week. And we'll have a full video dedicating that later this week. But I'm really excited about that overall for sure. Really looking forward to that for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the next-gen test that took place today and yesterday. Let's start off. So the next-gen test took place. So 8 drivers conducted a test. Chris Busch for Roush Premier Racing, William Byron for the 2400 Motorsports, Ross Chastain for Chip Ganassi Racing, which that's going to be Trackhouse going into next year. Cole Custer for Stewart Haas Racing, Austin Dillon for Richard Childress Racing, Denny Hamlin for Joe Gibbs Racing, Joe Logano for the 22 for Team Penske, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for JTG Doherty. First thing I want to talk about is the number placement. The number placement on the cars. There are some teams that basically did the old school number placement that we have, the 17 team, the 24 team, and the 47 team, basically have the numbers centered. While you had a few teams that did the newer ones. Joe Logano did the newer style, Austin Dillon did the newer style, and also, I believe, Ross Chastain did the newer style as well. If you want my thoughts on the next number placement, I think the number needs to be pushed back a little bit, to be perfectly honest with you, for it to be really, really good. I'm not saying that it needs to be centered on the door, but you need to push it back a little bit farther than it's still too close to the wheel. It's good for sponsors, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit too close to the wheel, and you have a little more where you still could have enough area to put the sponsors out. Another thing that's interesting, we'll talk now about the sounds on the cars. The sounds on the cars from the videos, oh my gosh, these cars sound absolutely incredible. They do sound a little bit slower, but that is because, of course, there's only 8 cars in a pack compared to 20 or 30 cars. You're going to have more energy in the field, and you're going to go a little more faster. When you have 30 cars in a pack, then you have, 4 or 5 or even 8 cars in a pack, you're going to have more there. But one thing I also noticed from this as well is that you could literally pass without side force. You could get a run in front of somebody, and you could pass without side force, which is really, really good to see. And you also, from what the test saw from the test, you could also bump draft as well, which is really, really big to see. But there's another little note that came from this next-gen test as well. There's going to be a rear view camera in the next-gen car as well. That's something I don't think we have seen in a very, very long time, or we've never seen. So that's something I'm really excited about, is that there's going to be a rear view camera on these cars. So we may have a new view and a new camera going into next year. That's great to see. Also, they also tested other types of horsepower packs as well. Today, they tested a 510 horsepower package with the rear spoiler reduced to 7 inches. So they decreased size of the spoiler to 7 inches, which actually made the cars a little bit slower, but they still were not too much off of the normal speed. You had a door bumper clear pocket saying that these cars were going 47, 48 seconds, which is not exactly true. You can't believe everything the door bumper clear pockets has said. But there's another little thing to note as well. John Props, who basically runs a lot of the technical stuff for NASCAR, he said that there will likely be a test at Daytona in January with possibly 26 plus teams showing up at that test. A lot of unknowns from us. Everything went according to plan. This is also Ricky Sanchez. We'll read those comments in just a little bit. But there's going to be a next-gen test that's going to be taking place in January. Now, there are a few tests that are also going to be taking place as well. You're going to have another test coming up at Bristol really, really soon. There's also tests, I believe, going on at the Charlotte Roval. And also, I think there's going to be a test at Talladega at Martinsville as well going down the road. So I'm definitely looking forward to that for sure, those tests. And hopefully those tests become public. But let's talk about this. We have not had a major test in a long time at Daytona National Speedway for preseason Thunder. The last time the preseason Thunder was a thing, I believe, was back in 2014, and we haven't had it in 7 years. But I've said a couple months ago that they need to, in my honest opinion, they need to have for the next gen test. They have got to, in my honest opinion, have preseason Thunder. You got to have everybody down there, especially for super speedways. You got to have more than 8 cars out there, and not to mention, it's a big test as well. Because of the fact that you're going to have not just 5 or 6 cars out there, you're going to pretty much have the whole field. So I would assume that every major team is going to be out there among others. And there's probably going to be like 30 or 35 teams more than that are saying currently moment. Probably all teams that are for sure going to be Daytona 500 among the other races. But now let's go ahead and look at the quotes from the test that took place as well. Here's what Ricky Sanchez Jr. had to say about this. Overall thoughts. A lot of unknowns for us. We got our car 3 weeks ago, and everybody at JTG put a lot of hard work into making sure we brought the best piece down here that we could. Everything went according to plan, really didn't have any major issues. Had a couple little things we worked through, but that's to be expected on a brand new car. Mine drove okay, some seemed to be dancing around a little bit loose, but all in for our drive really looked good and felt comfortable. Just trying to figure out how we're going to make better racing. Making sure that we can pass, get good runs, create good racing, I was really happy. I thought we all did a good job getting out there and working the lanes, working the bottom top, pushing each other. Really tried to simulate as much as we could a real race, and everybody did a good job at that. That's something really good to hear. Here's what Denny Hamlin had to say. He said, thoughts on goal for the session. We worked on some different packages and we try to make our cars suck up and draft. Obviously, our number one priority is to put on a great show when we come back. We're trying to figure out how we can make these cars draft, put on the greatest show that we worked on for 20 plus years with the other cars. It's a learning process. We're really focused on the heat of the car, trying to get the heat out. Those are our main focuses for the day. Thoughts on the first time testing a next-gen car? He said it's a race car. It's got 4 tires and a steering wheel. So from my standpoint, it doesn't change greatly. But still, there are some nuances. Your vision is a little different. The shifting is going to be different, especially when you go into road courses. So you're going to want to get as many reps as you can to learn that. Any chance that I get better implemented, the better off I will be. Here's what William Byron had to say. Overall thoughts. I thought it went really well. We got really aggressive there in the second drafting session. I felt like we were all pushing each other to make moves, and everyone was pretty comfortable with this, so that was really good to see. Regarding the speed of the car, it's within a second or two. I don't know exactly. It felt a little bit slower. You have a little bit more time to think on the speedways, but I like that. I think it's kind of lets you think more about the moves. Here's what Chris Buescher had to say about the inside of the car. Inside, we're working on getting some stuff figured out to make it a little more comfortable. The rear view camera is something that is really neat here. Learn a lot about it on the runs and the drafting runs there. You can actually see quite a bit more than you're used to. I use the camera a lot and a spotter up on the roof to learn more where cars are and be able to start to getting a gauge of how close they really are. Objects in mirror are closer than they appear. It still applies to the camera too. So we're still trying to figure that out. It's pretty warm, so we're working on trying to cool it off. We got some different hose configurations, so we're going through those, trying to elevate some of the heat outside. Aside from that, once you get strapped in, it doesn't feel a whole lot different than any other race car. That's great to hear. When drivers saying it races like a race car, that's something you want to hear. And those comments actually got me really, really intrigued, especially for the super speedways. And I'm definitely excited about this next-gen car for sure. One thing I do want to say to make really, really clear is that this next-gen car does not absolutely need to be perfect. When it comes out, it's going to have kinks. But one thing I want to see is how is this car going to race. I hope it races well enough so that fans can enjoy it going forward. The next-gen tests are definitely interesting. We're probably going to know more about these tests going forward really, really soon. And we got some more tests coming up really, really soon. But those are some of the drivers' comments from today. We'll talk more about that really, really soon. So, anyway, that is it for today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications so you're notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support our page as well. List description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about all the news from the next gen test? You like what you're hearing from the next gen test today? Or do you think we need a little bit more to come out before you make your decision on what you think about the next gen car? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about 2022 NASCAR schedule being released next week? And what are your thoughts about Gateway getting added and Pocono losing a date next year? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content like this on the channel. Take care, everybody.